Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Welcome to the conversation on unity, respect, and love. This is the first of the series of interview with all our seniors and brothers of Malaysia as part of the celebration of our 40th years anniversary. And to start off, we actually have with us one of our very pioneer brother Jothi. And many of you may have heard him spoke many times, heard his hilarious stories, his very heart-touching stories. And but I'm sure there are many others who have not heard his stories. And Brother Jothi is a very good storyteller. And one of my first experience was that I find that Brother Jothi is actually a very caring soul. There was once I had to travel to Madhuban at the very last notice to meet actually Daddy Janki with him. And he was already planning to go Madhuban. I wasn't planning at all. So I managed to book the ticket just the day before Baba was coming. And Brother Jothi actually waited for me. He had already made all his travel arrangement, but he waited for me at the Bombay airport. So that, when I arrived that late night, we could travel together on the internal flight and our journey all the way up to Mount Abu. So, it was very heart-touching experience for me. And I'm sure many others would have stories to tell of him. So we are going to, actually, I'm very honored today to be the anchor to ask Brother Jothi to share with us his memories of since the beginning. So to walk down this memory lane, I'm going to ask Brother Jothi to share with us, because I've heard before that he was not interested in God. He was more interested in sighting UFO. Yeah. So I would like to ask him to share with us, how did he switch from sighting UFO to sighting God? And what was his experience that make him realize that this is the journey or the God that he was looking for? Over to you, Brother Jothi.
There was this deep desire, because in the early days, I used to read a lot of books on sightings of UFO. And I thought that one day a UFO, an alien would take me away from this planet and take me to another world. And there was one incident that happened even before I came to knowledge, because of this deep desire to sight a UFO. While we were fishing in Lumut, a few Malay friends of mine, then it was dusk, and I saw a light rising, and then it waited there, and I thought it must have spotted me, and by some miraculous means, it will pull me out of this planet. But that didn't happen. It just flew past. Then I knew that there was something, whether it is a UFO or God or something is there, trying to make contact with me. That was my experience in its very beginning. That was many, many years before I came to this knowledge.
So I guess that UFO thing didn't have a chance to kidnap you, but another higher being has sight on you already, and that is Baba. So how did you come to accept this Raja Yoga knowledge, or how did you come to find it? How do you move on to find it? And actually, what was your experience in the beginning that made you realize that you would like to come into this path?
So my first encounter with the Brahma Kumaris was when Daddy Janki made her first visit to Malaysia. And there was a huge caption in the paper that the most stable mind in the world is coming to give us a talk. And on her head were all the EEG probe. And they said that in the test, no matter what test they did on her, she had great stability of mind. And it was around that time that I was also doing silver mind control. I knew that the ultimate mastery was the mastery of the mind. And if scientists itself are probing this lady, then I guess there is some stuff here. So that is how I went to this public program, which was all organized in just 3 days because Dadi Janki, I believe, was in Singapore for a public program. And the two brothers, Brother Tom and Robert, who were coordinating the centers here, had gone to Singapore to meet her. And she told them, go back and organize a program because I'm coming there. And it was like all organized specifically for me. If not for the picture with the EEG probe, that means it is very scientific. I don't think it would have interested me. And so when I attended this program, then Dadi Janki is only 5 foot tall, and she looks like one of these aliens. She was like out of this world. And she was so small that they had to put her on a table so that she can view the whole audience. There were about 350 of them in the Vivekananda Hall. And it was amazing. I did not understand. She was speaking in Hindi, but of course it was being translated in English. But the vibrations of the whole atmosphere was extremely powerful. And I could feel that the alien had come. And I was the first one to sign up for the course.
Can you share your experience? What, take us through, like vividly, what was your experience or feeling like when you first walk into the center? How you felt? What was it that really pulled you and make you feel like, okay, this is the place that I've been looking for? And how was the setup? What attracted you most?
So this place was in Lucky Garden, Bangsa. It was a bungalow house, but the center was just being set up, so which means it didn't have many facilities. So we all sat on the ground to do the course, I remember. And but it was very clear that their focus was on helping to develop the power of the mind. And I was already familiar with this when I was doing silver mind control. But here the body of knowledge was even more deeper and intense than the American scientists who had developed silver mind control was doing. It was going to the core of the subject that we are souls, not bodies. And it was the greatest knowledge I think anyone can receive. And that the Supreme Soul is God, but He is also a being of light, which means it tallied with my understanding that He is also an alien. And we are also aliens on this planet. So all my previous thinking was beginning to crystallize, that my thought that I want to meet an alien. I didn't even realize that I myself was an alien from another world, and God is the supreme alien. So everything gelled very easily. So I thought that I should take up this study seriously.
So how soon after that did you make your trip to Madhuban? And what was your first experience of meeting Baba and the rest of the global family?
But it was not an easy choice to make because you have to become a celibate, you have to become a vegetarian, you have to give up your nightlife, and you have to kind of start an early morning life. But because of the curiosity, I thought that whatever it is, I will sacrifice all that. And if I don't find anything substantial, I can always go back to that life. So it is like I am venturing into something, and if I find it is substantially going to enhance my life, then let me continue with it. And I've been doing this for the last 40 years. I've renewed my contract 40 times to be part of this Brahma Kumaris. So it is like I was never tied down to something for life. I was extending 1 year at a time, and 40 years has passed by and I'm still around.
Can you share what was your first experience of meeting Baba?
Even prior to that, I was thinking that there was something that happened very dramatic in my life. Just I think maybe 1 or 2 months after I've done the course and I've started to go early in the morning, and my home was very far away. It was in a place called Sungai Tua, which was about 25 kilometers from the center. And then one day, everyone in the house was pretty upset that when I came back home late at night, they were not so worried. But when I started leaving the house at 3:30 in the morning, they were very concerned that I was becoming a vegetarian and I must be going to some cult which brainwashing me. So they were more worried than when I was coming home late. So one night, my brother woke up and said, "Jothi, why you are strangling me?" So when I woke up, then I found that actually somebody was strangling him. And I thought, what can I do to help this brother? So I took a chair behind and tried to beat the burglar. But both my hands were restrained. That means another force was now taking control over my body, not wanting me to use violence on this burglar. Then when I looked around, I saw there were about 8 or 9 of them already entered the house, and I realized that whichever power is restraining me does not want me to use force. There was no sound, but I could understand everything that this energy was trying to tell me. And then another thought very clearly comes that I should sit down to meditate. And I very obediently followed. I sat down in a corner and then I said, "Now, Baba, what next?" So a thought very clearly comes, negotiate with the burglars. So I asked them, "What is the purpose of you coming? Do you all have some animosity that you want to destroy us or burn us up?" She said, "No, no, no, no. This is our profession. We have come to rob. So if you make it easy for us, then we will leave you all in peace." And so it was all negotiated. So whatever we could give, we gave them, and they left. And so that is when it dawned that if God had not intervened, it would have taken a different trend. I would have used force, which means they would have killed the whole family. So that was the turning point. Then I realized that God has saved not only me but the whole family. So whatever is the instruction of God, I'm going to follow. So that was when I really committed that now I must use this life for God's work. And then about my Madhvan trip. So then after following, in those days, you only had to follow the disciplines of this life for 6 months. And then I had few things in my mind because still there was this doubt, is this really God? If this is really God, he should be able to give me some indication of his presence. So when I went up the mountain, so in those days, in 1982, there were not many foreigners. I remember in this group of foreigners, there was only about 10 or 12 of us. And the very senior brother, who is the Secretary General of the organization, met us and asked us if we have any doubts to clear. Then I asked, everyone has asked, and he answered everyone. But when it came to my turn, I asked him, when God comes, do you all have some instrument to measure his coming, like a giga counter? If God is almighty, he must be coming with some great power that is measurable, isn't it? And then he went into silence and thought that I must have asked the wrong question. So he didn't answer me. Then in those days, because the numbers were small, we could have personal meeting when God descends into the body of Daddy Gulsa. And and I had a few things. I said, if you are God, then you must answer a few things that I have in my mind. And so then this message must have already gone to God. And so when God looked through Daddy Gulsa into my eyes, I could feel intense vibrations of love. Because each soul desires for something in life, and I was desiring for love. And God was giving the vibrations of love, very deep and intense. And then I realized that a physical instrument cannot measure this kind of an energy. It is a human soul that can measure that energy, and I was experiencing that. So in my mind, I'm communicating with him. I said, I'm very convinced that only God could transmit this kind of an energy. But God was not satisfied. I was convinced that this is God, but he was not satisfied. Then I also had a thought in my first visit to Singapore for one of the Raki programs. A very beautiful blessing was given to me. And in that it stated that you are you are the shining star of God's eyes. And I said, this is a very beautiful blessing. And when I come to meet you, you must give me that same blessing. And after giving that experience of drishti, then when God opened his mouth to speak, he said, you are the long lost and now found child, and you are the shining star of my eyes. So it became clear that no one could read my thought as clearly as this one was able to. And that was not enough for him. He felt that he needed to convince me further. There was always a top secret in my mind, because when I came to Baba, I was 35 years old, and the thought was that if I want to get married, whoever is in love with me should express their love to me, then I might think about it. And after the long meeting and giving me further vibrations of love, then God opened his mouth and said that I love you. And then I became like a bride, and tears was flowing, and I realized that so this is what I had been waiting for 35 years of my life, that I wanted no ordinary human being to be my partner, but I had wanted God himself to be my partner. So not that God be my partner, but I become his partner. So he is like the bridegroom, and whether we are male or female, all souls are children of God. So I became like a bride to him. So my life was sealed.
Jothi, this is quite a personal question. In your 35 years of living, did you find that you have any attraction to anyone?
Yeah. So as a human, because we have always have come into human relationship. So there was, of course, someone that had come into my life at that period of time, and it was very much attracting me that why not I carry the journey of this spiritual life, uh, being with someone that was there. But the strange thing in this organization is want us to have only one relationship with God. So I could feel that they were not approving of this new relationship that I was trying to forge. So in this institution, nobody comes into sound, but you seem to understand everyone's thinking. So I was catching the vibrations that they were not happy that I was coming, into a human relationship. So I caught that signal and said, okay, let this person be a brother or a sister, and let my relationship be only with God.
But did you not find that also God has a play also? It's like knowing that, he's going to make you his instrument. He probably has caught hold of you more tightly, or lock your heart away before you can give it to somebody else.
Right. Because I remember for many years I had many people who I've been very close with, but somehow it was always being sabotaged. So I knew that God had a part in this. So when I finally met him, then I realized that he was the one who had made sure that there was no human relationship for me in this life. Even astrologers have told me that you will always be a bachelor. Marriage is not suitable for you. That they also told me that you will become spiritual at the age of 45. So everything was falling into place accurately. So even when I left Madhuban and was coming down to Malaysia, when I reached Malaysia, my thought was that what is the need to go back home to your parents' home? Why not I stay in the center? I didn't know the rule was that you will have to be in this knowledge for a year, and then they will assess you, and then only they will admit you to a center. But here, very innocently, I asked, can I stay for 2 weeks till I buy my car? And Dr. Nirmala, Dr. Nirmala, who is our regional director, so they called, Brother Tom called, and he said, yes, she can stay. Then after 2 weeks, then I thought that maybe I should ask for an extension. So I was like a camel who had put his head inside the tent, and finding the tent very warm, I wanted my body also inside. So then I asked, this time I was more clever, I asked, can I stay forever? And to that also the reply came, you're most welcome. And since then, I have been in the center for the last 39 years, I suppose.
When you move into the center, you were still working as an engineer, right? Moving about.
Yeah.
So you were interacting with outside people. Was there any time that, people shared with you or were attracted by your spirituality? I remember you shared once about, being offered a position of a Christian priest.
Yes, a pastor.
They want to make you into a pastor.
There was the director of a hospital in Penang who had become a born-again Christian, and he thought that I had the right personality to be trained as a pastor. And so he gave me a very big job in Penang, which would make me stay there for a month. And then he told me that I am giving this job so that you can be on site. I was in sales at that time. So when a job is being done, usually others would go. But he said, no, I want you to be on site for this whole month. And then I told him that you have to inform my boss that you want me to supervise the job. And I stayed there. So after he handles his morning meetings with the other doctors, Then at 10 o'clock or something, he said, Jothi, have you sorted out all your work so that your men can do the job in your absence? I said, yes, sir. So every day, 10 o'clock, he will invite me to his room and we would have a discussion. Because he could see that someone who used to be so used to nightlife was now totally different. And so in his mind, he thought that I will make an excellent pastor for his organization. So then one day, after long terms of discussing different things, because he was studying my personality, studying what I had been doing in this Raja Yoga and all this, says to the, see, being in this organization, you have to work, you have to support the organization. Yeah? If you take my suggestion of being a pastor, you will be paid. You don't have to be an engineer and do two things at one go. You can be just one, you have to take only one responsibility. Will you accept this? But because I could not say yes, I could not say no, because it might jeopardize my job with him. He might not give future jobs. So I said, I'll think about it and I'll come back to you. So then I realized that not only a spiritual or a religious organization is looking at my personality, but even God is saying that I have some personality which will enable his business to be done as well. So in fact, it is only after I came into the Brahma Kumari, before my boss always used to tell me that instead of being in the technical division, why don't you move into the sales division? You will make an excellent salesman. Then I realized that God also had employed me as a salesman to do his business. Because I realized that I had the potential to win people's heart. And to serve and bring people into this knowledge, you need that ability, which I had. So I began to excel because my job took me throughout the country because we had to install things in hospitals. And so this is how we traveled. I spent a lot of time in Penang, and this is how many centers in the center itself in Penang opened.
Jothi, service has evolved so much, like, now we are into Zoom, but can you just take us back to the early days? How was service being done? What was service like? What was the essence of service? What was the, the purpose of, what was the aim, more the aim of serving? And how were the students feeling from, when they come into this Brahma Kumaris movements?
So right from the beginning, our lives was very adventurous. Our BK life was extremely an adventurous life, where there were just a few of us. I remember it was Brother Tom, Robert, myself. We were in the centers, and it was a very small family. And we would organize every Sunday or alternate Sundays. We would prepare a picnic, breakfast, lunch, and then we will drive all the way to Fraser's Hill, and then we will take sheets and put under the tree, and then this is where our Murli reading would be, and it was very entertaining. And people were drawn to us, I think more because of our innocence. I remember one time when we were in Fraser's Hill, there was one shop assistant who came running out, a lady, and she said, "The children of God have come." We were just dumbfounded. That how does she recognize us as children of God? So that kind of vibrations were vibrating in us. that people could recognize us very easily. We didn't have to do much to organize programs. Like now, we have to do a lot to do things. But in those days, our innocence, our intoxication, our zeal, our enthusiasm was extremely high. Every week we were doing something, going here, going there. So it was the best part of my Brahmin life, I think, has been in those days.
Sorry. When I first came in knowledge, I think it was 1989. And I think that was the time where you have to move from the main center, Bangsa, to, I think, Johor. You know, being in charge in the main center and then moving to start Johor service. What was your feeling like at that time?
So for me, position did not matter. It is just that many brothers had emerged, many sisters had emerged who could take care of the service in KL. So, and it was also at that time that I had started a business, very much against the desire of Didi. She said, no, you stay in the job, it'll be better for you. But I thought that if I went into a business, then I could have a lot more time for service. I could have a lot more money. And so I ventured, I left my job and whatever savings I had, I set up a business. And I used to travel in that business between Penang and KL because the manufacturer was in Penang and I used in Butterworth, and I used to get the things there and supply to Motorola. So it was doing well. But suddenly competitors came and I lost the contract, and then there was no job, no business. Whatever money I had already finished. Then I asked again, Didi, that I am in this state. What should I do? I thought she will scold me. But this is an institution that never scolds. Even if you make a mistake, they said, don't worry. We can make other plans. So he says, now that you're without a job means that you are mobile. Why don't you move south and set up a base there? Because at that time, Singapore has already been coming into Johor during the Thaipusam time to organize programs, and souls were in Johor were creating an interest. So it says an interest is being generated. So why don't you set up your base in Johor? So I said, I don't have a bank balance. I don't have a job. Then how do you expect me to start anything? So in this organization, they have one word. They say, don't worry. Baba will take care. So I went. And then when I reached JB, then she asked me to get in touch with Bharati in Singapore. She said she will give you 5,000. Use that 5,000 to establish a center there. And then I was thinking, I said, then in my mind, I said, what about a job? 5,000 will finish in I'm paying up for the deposit and all that will finish that 5,000. And what do I do after that? Then one of the brothers in Singapore, Brother Francis, so he said that I'll make an appointment with my boss. Why don't you come for the interview? Because his boss has always been asking me, because Francis was this man's manager for Singapore, and he wanted to set up a branch in JB to duplicate that business in Johor, and he wanted a very, very reliable, trustworthy person. And he thought that someone who belongs to Brahma Kumaris will be the most qualified person for this job. So I went for the interview, and he said, "I've already decided to take you." But I said, my field of engineering is completely different from your field of engineering. So I will be a misfit there. He says, no. Technically, it is easy to train from one field to another field, but to create trust is not easy. And if you are from this organization, I guess you have that qualification. So that's how so we set up a branch in Johor to duplicate the business here. And it took about 6 months to learn this field of engineering, and all was set. So which means then I told him that you know that our main purpose in life is serving this organization. Job is only a secondary thing. He said, I know that because I know how my manager juggles his time between Raj Yoga and this job, and he's doing very well. So I guess you can learn from him how to juggle two things in your life: run a center and run the organization, the company. So this is how everything was like God was planning my life in such a way that there will be financial earning to run the center. There will the job also will not take too much of my time, that I will not be able to serve the center. So there was a very beautiful balance. And I'm always meeting people in the course of my business. So which means that I could also impart this knowledge to them. I was able to have programs in the factories, whichever I was doing business with. So it was like I had the best of two worlds while I was here in Johor. So it was, so the whole thought of leaving KL and all that, I know it is in good hands. Brother Lachu had taken up, and there was a team of brothers who were very capable, and so I didn't have to worry about leaving that shop and starting this new shop. So this is how very adventurous life, very challenging but very adventurous.
Jothi, you mentioned that in this organization, nobody scolds you. And also you talk about trust. I'm sure you have the specialities, as I've known also, that when someone make mistakes, you don't put them down, but you rather try to help them to correct their mistakes or uplift them. Can you share some of these experiences, whether it is in this Brahmin life or in your lockheed job?
Both areas, even in my logging job, because I have to spend a lot of time with the centers, I am actually have to put full trust on the people that I've employed. And there was an instant in which the lady that I had trusted the accounts with was manipulating that and siphoning out some money. My other business friend told me that you have to watch out for this lady because her dresses are getting expensive, her hairdo is becoming expensive, and I'm sure you're not paying that kind of a salary. So they were just like pre-warning me. So then I would observe that something was not right, but I could not place my finger exactly how she could be siphoning when I'm signing all the check, and it is not possible. But signal was given, so I was being cautious. And I knew, so I would tell her that for the amount of business that we are doing, our bank balance doesn't seem to show that. What's happening? He said, no, because we have so many expenses, so money has to go. So from the voice, when we become spiritual, actually we can sense people's being truthful and honest or not. So then one day, but still I cannot have any documentary proof that she's cheating me. But one day she, in the manipulation of this, what you call that, documents. There was one document that she used as a scrap paper, in which on the one side, on the other side, it was written that so much money was being given to one of my staff as overtime. And that slip went, the other side, the recycle side, went to the person whose name was there. And he brought this paper to me. He says, look at what is written here. I didn't claim this much overtime, and it is stating here that I've claimed this much. Then I knew that whatever my other business colleague was saying is true. So then I asked her, I said, I feel something. She said, Jothi, I've done so much for you. Don't you trust me? I could see the voice change. So then I thought that, then I went to the bank and I asked them to, all the checks, I asked my auditor to check all the check buds and see which doesn't seem to tally. And then we took out that, and then I got the checks. And in that check, I found that I'd signed this check for someone else, but her name was there. Because when she would bring a check at the last moment, so that I am in a rush, so I would put the signature. She said, I'll fill the details later. So much trust I had, blind. And I would sign. That would be the last check. Everything else I've noticed. And then she would put a name, and she would even alter the amount, because she will leave a space. 3-digit will be there, and she can add whatever she wants according to how much bank balance I have. So then when I caught her, then I said that you have betrayed my trust. So I have little choice but to report you to the police, and whatever they have to do, it's up to them. Then she said that she's a single mother with one daughter. She said, if you do this and if you put me in jail, that will be the end of my daughter's life. Then I also thought that, even though I am losing about 30,000-40,000, which I am not going to retrieve anyway, and then on top of that, to ruin this person's life, it is like double loss for me and loss for her. So I said, there is one thing you can do, because there is everything, the whole company's operation is in our hands. Even I don't know many things. And I told her that I will bring one person to take over from you, so you hand over smoothly. Then you can go. I will pardon you for whatever you have done. If you can give me back the money, I will accept. If you can't, it is up to you. And so I called. So this is when I called brother from Ampang, what's his name? The Ampang brother Tai came over, because I didn't want to take someone from outside. Instead of having one thief, I will have two thieves. So I told Didi that I want someone from the center to take over the account, and I know that I can trust a BK. So this is how the takeover was done, and then the operation moved smoothly. So sometimes we have to forgive and forget, even if there is a loss. So even in BK life, no matter what anyone does, I am very quick at forgiving and forgetting. I don't harbor any grudge on anyone. So I guess this was a specialty that I had. Spirituality actually helps you to develop such fine, refined qualities in your life that you can turn an adverse situation into a good situation again. So I had very little enemies in my whole life, whether in my business life or in my spiritual life.
Brother Jothi, one last question. As the theme of our conversation is on unity, respect, and love, would you see any difference in the team in the early days and in the present time on this theme? How was the unity like in the early days, respect like in the early days, or love like in the early days as compared to the present times?
In the beginning, we are a family. So unity was natural. There were very few of us. So to be united at that time was much, much easier. But now the organization has taken on a very huge form. And so there will be a lot of challenge at this time to maintain that same unity, harmony, everything. Now it would be a great challenge. But even then, if we can bridge organization and family as the twin two strand of the helix, then I guess we will have the best of two worlds. We can have unity and we can have organization also together. So the family must not be lost in the creation of an organization. It is the Brahma Kumaris is essentially a family and an organization only for the purpose of seeing that we are following the rules of the government. So that part is also necessary because finance, everything is growing, which means now we are a very large organization. I think our assets in Malaysia itself would be 50, 60 million, I think now. I'm not sure, but it's quite huge. So which means that everything has to be managed well so that there is no misappropriation of funds. So this is the only organization that has functioned extremely well, without any corruption at all. This is the organization in which it is not outside people who finances, but it is the family members of the Brahma Kumaris who are financing and running this organization. So it is still very much like a family. So the theme of, I forget the theme.
Unity, respect, and love. As you
Unity, respect. So unity, respect. So and everyone is a diverse personality. I mean, a unique personality. So we have to see the speciality of each other, and we have to see that we were not selected by ourselves. It was God who selected us in these organizations. We were not elected. We were selected by God because of our speciality to create this organization. So if I am seeing the speciality of each one of us, then we will maintain respect. And because we are a family, we will have unity. And what was the third one?
Thank you, Brother Jothi, for your very interesting sharing. So unfortunately, we have come to the end of the time given. So we will have to sleep tonight with what you have shared with us. Yeah. And remember that we are first a family and then an organization. Yeah. And maintain that unity, respect, and love for everyone.
Love is a very essential component in this whole thing. It is love that threads us all together.
It is love that threads us all together and makes us into the beats of the rosary. So right. Thank you everybody for watching this program. There will be more coming up, and the next will be interview with Brother Lechu, which will be in Tamil, and then it will be happening in 3 languages. Yeah, the flyers, promotions notice will be up very soon. So just stay on, and you will not miss any of the session. So thank you to everybody, and good night. So we shall now end with a commentary. Brother Jothi is going to give us a very powerful experience of the soul while we follow the commentary in the background. So sit back, relax yourself, make sure your spine is straight, and just look in the center of forehead of Brother Jothi, or if you're not used to it, just in your inner eye, see the point of light. Withdraw all your thoughts from the external and visualizing yourself as a point of light. I, the point of light, am a child of Baba, who is the supreme point of light. And I stay firm, seeing this point of light, the supreme light. And in my awareness of being a point of light, I visualize connecting with the supreme point of light, just like a point connecting to a point. As I draw my energy up towards that point, Baba reciprocated by sending his laser beam of light down where our lights meet, and Baba's divine light, pure light, travel down to the soul, purifying the soul. As I stay firm in this connection, I'm experiencing Baba's pure energy, Baba's pure love flowing down to the soul. Baba surrounds the soul with his pure light. This pure light, as it travels into the soul, it forms an aura of pure light. Light that is so lovely, so gentle, so divine, and yet so powerful. I stay firm in this awareness, absorbing Baba's light. As I absorb his light, I experience his light spreading out from the soul out to the atmosphere, out of this community, out of this country, and into the whole world. This light of Baba, which is so pure and powerful, travel around the world, enveloping the whole world, like a mother enveloping a child in a gentle and loving way. Through these waves of energy, my brother souls in the world experience that safety, that strength, and that love from Baba. And they will come to realize that there is this higher force above all the human world, the human happenings. And this supreme energy is the one that we have now come to seek, to be reunited with him, because it is time for us to go back home. Om Shanti.